My name was changed to protect me, my city too. But what I'm about to tell you is absolutely true. For 15 years, I was an agent of the Kingdom of Darkness, and my main mission was to neutralize fasting Christians. Today, I am free, I sleep peacefully, I pray without hindrance, I fast without being attacked, but this freedom came at a high price. It cost me 15 years of my life in darkness, it cost me my sanity, it almost cost me my family. My name is Diallo, I am 41 years old, I live in Buake, Ivory Coast, and what I am about to reveal to you today will change the way you fast forever. You see, in the world of darkness, there is information that agents never share, secrets jealously guarded because they reveal our weaknesses, and the greatest of these weaknesses, the one we only discussed among ourselves, was our absolute terror of certain Christians who fasted. Not all Christians, not all young people, but certain believers, on certain specific days, became completely untouchable, and when I say untouchable, I mean we couldn't even approach them. Their prayers during those days burned us like fire. Let me tell you how I got to this point, how a desperate father became an instrument of destruction, and above all, let me reveal to you those 3 days of fasting that terrified us so much that we organized special meetings just to discuss how to counter them. It all started 15 years ago when my daughter Aminata was 3 years old. She was sick, seriously ill. The doctors in Buake didn't understand what was wrong with her. We took her to the best hospitals in Abidjan. They ran every possible test, nothing, no diagnosis. My little girl was wasting away before my eyes. She, who had been so full of life, so joyful, no longer smiled, she no longer ate, she was getting thinner every day. My wife, Fate, cried every night, and I felt powerless, completely powerless. I remember the sleepless nights spent watching my daughter sleep, fearing she wouldn't wake up. I remember the desperate prayers I offered, even though at the time I wasn't really religious. I remember that horrible feeling of being faced with something I didn't understand and couldn't fight. A co-worker, seeing my distress, told me about a marabout in Korogo. He told me that this man had powers, that he healed what medicine couldn't. In my despair, I decided to go. I had nothing left to lose, or so I thought. I still remember that trip, hours of driving from Bui, my daughter in my arms, so light, so fragile, my wife beside me, her face etched with tears and sleepless nights. We were ready to do anything, we would have given anything to save our child. The marabout's name was Su. He lived in a house on the outskirts of the village, surrounded by tall trees, immense trees whose branches seemed to touch the sky. The place was strangely silent, no birds, no animal noises, just a heavy silence that seemed to swallow all sounds. When we arrived, he was waiting for us as if he knew we were coming. He was sitting on a mat in front of his house, his eyes closed, but as soon as our car stopped, he opened his eyes and looked at us. His gaze chilled me to the bone. There was something in his eyes, something inhuman. He looked at my daughter for a long moment without saying a word. He placed his hand on his forehead, closed his eyes, and then nodded slowly as if confirming something he already knew. "This child is under attack," he said. His voice was deep, almost cavernous. "Someone in your family has put a spell on her. The doctors will never find anything because it's not a physical illness, it's a mental one." I felt my senses go cold. An attack on my innocent 3-year-old daughter. Who could do such a thing? And why? This man seemed to read my thoughts. "Jealousy," he said. "Jealousy is a powerful poison. Someone in your circle envied your happiness, your marriage, your success, and this person decided to make you suffer by attacking what you held most dear, your child." My wife began to cry. She held Minata close as if she wanted to protect her from all the evil in the world. But how can you protect someone from something you can neither see nor understand? The marabout continued, "I can save her, I have the power to break the spell and protect her forever. But there's a price." At that moment, I would have given anything, my house, my savings, my very life. All that mattered was saving Aminata. I wasn't thinking straight. I was ready to do anything. "What is that price?" I asked. Sko looked me straight in the eyes. and in that look, I saw something that should have alerted me, a glimmer of satisfaction, like a hunter who has just captured his prey. "You," he said, "will work for me, for the kingdom I will serve, and in exchange, your daughter will live." I didn't really understand what he meant. Work for him? Do what? I thought maybe he wanted me to become his assistant, to help him with his rituals, something like that. I didn't imagine for a second what truly awaited me. My wife held our daughter tightly, and I saw in her eyes that silent plea, "Save her, no matter the cost, no matter what you have to do, save our child." I agreed. That single word, that yes I uttered that day, sealed my fate for the next 15 years. That yes transformed me from a loving father into an instrument of destruction. That yes stripped me of my humanity. That night, the marabout performed a ritual on my daughter. I won't describe the details because they still haunt me. What I can tell you is that that night, I saw things I should never have seen. I heard voices I should never have heard. I felt presences I should never have felt. But the next morning, Aminata was smiling. She asked for food. She had regained her color. In the space of one night, my dying daughter had become the joyful little girl I knew. My wife wept with joy, and so did I. We thought the nightmare was over. We thanked the marabout. We paid what he asked. We returned to Booker with light hearts, convinced that it was all over. We didn't know that it was only just beginning. A week later, Siku summoned me. He sent me a message through one of his emissaries with a blank stare, who found me at my workplace. He told me that the master was waiting for me, that I had to come alone, that I mustn't tell anyone. I should have refused. I should have understood that something was wrong, but fear gripped me, and if I refused, what would happen to my daughter? Could the spell return? Could we undo what had been done? I went to Korogo, this time alone. Siku explained to me what I was going to have to do it. He told me I would receive powers to travel in my mind, powers to influence people remotely, powers to attack. He explained that I had made a pact, that this pact was sealed with my daughter's blood, that I could no longer back out, that if I tried to escape or refuse, not only would my daughter die, but my entire family would be destroyed, my wife, my parents, my brothers and sisters, everyone I loved. I was trapped, completely trapped. I had wanted to save my daughter, and in exchange, I had sold my soul in the truest sense of the word. The initiation lasted 7 days, 7 days in the forest with other initiates, men and women of all ages, some whether by choice, drawn by the promise of power and wealth, others, like me, had been trapped. We all had one thing in common: we were on the verge of losing our humanity. I can't describe everything that happened during those 7 days. Some things are too dark to recount. But what I can tell you is that by the end of that week, I was a different person. I had abilities I hadn't possessed before. I could see things others couldn't. I could hear voices others didn't. I could travel in my mind while I slept, and I had received my mission, my specialty, if you can call it that. Each agent has an area of expertise. Some handle marriages. They sow discord between spouses, they cause divorces, they destroy families from within. Others handle finances, they block promotions, they ruin businesses, they keep people in poverty. I had received a specific mission. I had to neutralize the fasting Christians. These blows had detected something special in me, he said, an ability to detect prayers and fasting from a distance, a spiritual sensitivity that made me the ideal agent for this mission. At first, I didn't understand why this mission was so important. Why focus on fasting Christians? There were so many other targets: rich people to fleece, couples to destroy, careers to sabotage. Why Christians in particular? Sku explained. He told me that praying Christians represent a danger to the kingdom of darkness, but Christians who fast while praying are an existential threat. When a Christian combines prayer with fasting, something happens in the spiritual world, something we cannot control, something that burns us. He told me that fasting weakens the flesh and strengthens the spirit, that when a Christian mortifies his body through fasting, his spirit becomes more sensitive to the things of God, his prayers rise higher, his declarations have more power. and above all, his protection becomes stronger. My mission was therefore to monitor the Christians in my area of operation, to identify those who began to fast, and to neutralize them before their fasting became a weapon against us. I had several techniques for this. The first was distraction. When I detected that a Christian was beginning a fast, I looked for something to distract them: an urgent problem at work, a sudden family conflict, unexpected bad news, anything to divert their attention and push them to break their fast. The second technique was temptation. I provoked irresistible cravings. The smell of food suddenly became stronger. A colleague brought their favorite dish to the office. An irresistible lunch invitation arrived at the worst possible time. The third technique was physical attack. When the first two didn't work, I induced faintness, terrible headaches, dizziness, and sudden weakness. I would convince the person that fasting was dangerous for their health, that their body couldn't withstand it. These techniques worked on most people. 8 out of 10 Christians abandoned their fast in the face of these attacks. They didn't realize that these obstacles were spiritual in origin. They thought it was just life, just unfortunate coincidences. But there were the others, the 2 out of 10 who didn't give in, those who continued despite everything, and among them, there was an even smaller group, those who fasted on specific days. That's when I discovered the truth about the 3 days. The first time I tried to attack a Christian who fasted on Mondays, I was repelled so violently that I thought I was going to die. In the natural world, I was just lying in bed, asleep, but in the spiritual world, I had been thrown backward with incredible force, as if an invisible giant had struck me in the chest. I went back to see his friends the next day, still trembling from what had happened. I asked him what was wrong, why this person was so different from others. His friends nodded slowly. He told me I had discovered something important, that certain days of the week have a special spiritual significance, and that Monday is one of those days. He explained that Monday is the beginning of the week, the first day of work for most people, and that in the spiritual world, what happens at the beginning determines what happens next. When a Christian fasts on Monday, he takes authority over his entire week. He declares that this week belongs to him, that nothing bad can touch him for the next 7 days. It was like building a wall around 7 whole days, a wall we couldn't breach. We had to wait until the following week for a chance to attack, and if that person fasted every Monday, we never had an opportunity. I asked his blows how to counter this. He looked at me grimly and said there wasn't really a solution. The only thing to do was try to stop them from starting. Once they fasted on Monday morning, that was it for the week. So, we developed a strategy. We attacked on Sunday night. We provoked insomnia, marital arguments, sudden worries about the future, anything to make the person wake up on Monday exhausted, discouraged, and in no condition to fast. This strategy sometimes worked, but not always. The most determined Christians fasted anyway, and it became completely untouchable for us. I remember a businessman in Abidjan. He had fasted every Monday for 12 years, 12 years without exception, rain or shine, sickness or health, travel or work, every Monday. He fasted from sunrise to sunset. His attacks had assigned me to him for 6 months, 6 full months. My sole mission was to neutralize him, to find a weakness, to attack him when he let his guard down. In 6 months, I didn't succeed once. Not a single attack was successful. Every Monday, when I tried to approach him in spirit, I encountered that same wall, that same impenetrable protection, that same light that repelled me. I finally gave up. His attacks were furious. He punished me severely for my failure. But even he had to admit that some targets were simply inaccessible. This businessman is now one of the most successful men in Ivory Coast. His family is close-knit. His children are successful. His business grows year after year. We tried for years to reach him. We failed every time, and it was all because of Monday. But Monday wasn't the only dangerous day for us. There was also Wednesday. And Wednesday was even worse in some ways. Wednesday is the middle of the week, the day that separates the beginning from the end, and in the spiritual world, this day has a special significance. It is the day of intercession. It has been explained that Wednesday is the day when heaven listens attentively. Prayers offered during a Wednesday fast go directly to the throne of God without hindrance, without interference, as if a direct line were established between the believer and the Creator. Christians who fast on Wednesdays don't just pray for themselves, they intercede for others, for their family, for their community, for their nation, and their prayers have a terrible power. Terrible for us, I mean. I remember a cleaning woman in a working-class neighborhood of Buick. She had nothing, no money, no social standing, no formal education, but every Wednesday, she fasted and prayed for her son, who was in prison. Her son had been convicted of theft. He had joined a gang and made bad choices. He had been in prison for 3 years with 7 more to serve. In the natural world, all seemed lost for him. But this mother prayed every Wednesday without fail. I had been assigned to neutralize her prayers, to ensure that her son remained in darkness, to prevent him from repenting and changing. I never succeeded. Every Wednesday, when this woman fasted and prayed, I couldn't go near her son. Even in prison, even surrounded by hardened criminals, he was protected. His mother's prayers created a bubble of light around him. 1 week couldn't penetrate, and little by little, I saw this boy change. He began to read the Bible his mother had sent him. He began to pray. He began to talk about God to the other prisoners. In 2 years, he had converted half of his cell. When he was released from prison with a reduced sentence for good behavior, he became an evangelist. Today, he travels through the prisons of Ivory Coast preaching the gospel. Hundreds of prisoners have given their lives to Jesus because of him, and it all began with the prayers of a cleaning woman who fasts on Wednesdays. I'm telling you these stories so you understand. It's not about social standing, it's not about money or education, it's about spiritual discipline. It's about faithfulness in fasting and prayer. Monday protects, Wednesday intercedes, but there was a third day, a day we dreaded more than any other, a day we only spoke of in hushed tones, even among ourselves. Friday. Friday is the day of the crucifixion, the day Jesus died on the cross, the day he spoke those words that still echo in eternity, "It is finished." When Jesus uttered those words, something happened in the spiritual realm. The gates of hell trembled. The chains of humanity were broken. Victory over sin and death was sealed forever. And every Friday, when a Christian fasts, he or she associates oneself with that victory. He or she proclaims that what was accomplished on the cross is still active in his or her life. He or she declares that the blood of Jesus still flows, still purifies, still protects. For us, agent of darkness, Friday was a day of absolute horror. I remember my first attempt to attack a Christian who fasted on Fridays. He was a pastor in a small village near Man, a simple man who led a small church of about 50 people, nothing impressive in the eyes of the world. But when I tried to approach him that Friday, I had a vision I will never forget. I saw the cross, not an artistic representation, not a symbol. The real cross standing before me, between this pastor and me. And blood was flowing from that cross, living blood. Blood that spoke. Blood that cried out in victory. I ran away. I ran like a terrified animal. I didn't even try to attack. I just ran away. When I told his friends about it, he wasn't surprised. He told me that Friday was the most dangerous day for us, that Christians who fast on that day enter a spiritual dimension where we absolutely cannot keep up. They are literally beyond our reach. He also told me something that struck me. He said we had no countermeasure for Friday, no strategy, no technique. When a Christian fasts on Friday with faith and devotion, he is invincible. We can only hope that he will stop, become discouraged, forget, but those who persist are lost to us forever. Now imagine someone who combines all 3 days, Monday for protection, Wednesday for intercession, Friday for victory. 3 days out of almost half the week in a state of maximum spiritual power. These Christians were our worst nightmare. We held special meetings just to discuss them. We shared information between agents in different regions. We desperately searched for solutions. We have never found one. If you are watching this video today, it may be because you are searching. Perhaps you feel that something is wrong in your spiritual life. Perhaps you are experiencing attacks you don't understand. Perhaps your prayers seem blocked. I want to invite you to participate in something that will change your life. There is a 21-day deliverance protocol developed by believers who understand spiritual warfare. These believers have combined their experience and knowledge to create a comprehensive guide to liberation. I have personally followed this protocol and can attest to its effectiveness. For 21 days, you will be guided step by step through a process of liberation. Each day brings a new revelation. Each week breaks a new chain. This protocol includes specific prayers for each type of affliction, scripture-based statements of faith, instructions for fasting and meditation, and most importantly, a proven methodology for closing open doors in your life. The book is called Destroying the Affections, the 21-Day Deliverance Protocol. You'll find the link in the description of this video, but let me continue my testimony because I haven't finished telling you how I was set free. I can't describe the rituals we went through, some were too horrific to recount. What I can tell you is that by the end of those 7 days, I was no longer the same man. Something had changed within me, something fundamental. I could see things that others couldn't see, I could hear voices that others couldn't hear, and most importantly, I had abilities I never imagined I possessed, and I had a mission. My primary mission was to neutralize Christians, not all Christians, but those who prayed fervently, those who fasted regularly, those whose faith posed a threat to the kingdom of darkness. The first few weeks were the most challenging. I had to learn how to use my newfound powers. I had to learn to travel in the mind. I had to learn to attack undetected. His blows were my mentor. He taught me the techniques. He assigned me targets. He checked my results. My first mission was a pastor in pact, a man who preached powerfully and delivered people from demons. He told me that this man was dangerous, that he was freeing too many people, that he was weakening the kingdom. That night, I traveled in my spirit to the pastor's house. It was the first time I had ever done anything like that. I lay down on my bed, closed my eyes, and felt my spirit leave my body. It was a strange sensation, like floating, like flying, but at the same time, it was terrifying. I found the pastor's house. I went inside. He was sleeping peacefully next to his wife. I began to do what he had taught me. I planted seeds of confusion in his mind, seeds of doubt, seeds of fear, but something strange happened. The moment I approached him, I felt a resistance like an invisible wall. The closer I tried to get, the stronger this wall became, and then I saw something, a light emanating from this sleeping man, a light that burned me. I had to back away, I had to flee. I returned to my body, trembling, frightened, not understanding what had just happened. The next day, I told his friends about it. He nodded as if he'd been expecting it. "This pastor fasts," he said. "Christians who fast are hard to reach, their spiritual protection is stronger, but don't worry, we'll find a moment when he's vulnerable." That's when I began to understand, fasting wasn't just a religious practice, fasting had real power, a power that terrified us. Over the months, I learned to identify fasting Christians. I could recognize them in the spirit. They had a different light, a different protection, and I knew to avoid them or wait until they were more vulnerable. For the first few years, I was effective, terribly effective. I attacked those who didn't pray, those who didn't fast, those who lived in sin, and thus opened doors. I worked at night while people slept. I visited their homes in the spirit. I planted seeds of confusion, sickness, and division. I stole their peace, their joy, their prosperity. I destroyed marriages. I ruined businesses. I sowed disease and death. Each victory brought me favors from its blows. Each destruction gave me more power, but each night I lost a little more of my humanity. My wife, Fate, saw the change. She asked me questions, but I couldn't answer her. She saw my eyes hollow from lack of sleep. She saw my growing thinness. She saw the constant fear in my eyes. She thought I had an illness. She begged me to see a doctor, but how could a doctor cure what was destroying me? How could medicine heal a lost soul? But very soon, I discovered something that deeply troubled me. Some Christians were absolutely unreachable. No matter what I tried, no matter what power I used, they remained protected as if by an invisible fortress. The first time I encountered this phenomenon, I thought it was a coincidence, perhaps a particularly devout Christian, but it happened again and again, always with the same type of person. I told him about it. He looked at me with a mixture of respect and awe. These are the true fasters, he said, not those who skip a meal now and then, but those who fast intentionally, with faith, with perseverance. He explained that there was a hierarchy in the spiritual realm, that fasting elevated believers to a level where our attacks could no longer reach them, their prayers ascended directly to heaven without obstruction, their spiritual protection became impenetrable, but most importantly, he revealed something to me that would change my entire understanding of spiritual warfare. Something the kingdom of darkness kept secret, something we only discussed among ourselves in our most private gatherings. There are 3 days of the week, he said, when fasting Christians become like fire to us. On those days, not only can we not attack them, but their mere presence in our minds weakens us, their prayer burns us, their declaration paralyzes us. I asked what those days were. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Those 3 days, those 3 simple days of the week, were our nightmare, our absolute terror, and I will explain why. Monday is the first day of the work week. In the spiritual world, it is the day when the plans for the week are established, the week's battles are decided, the territories are demarcated. When a Christian fasts on Monday, he takes authority over his entire week before it even begins. He declares from the outset that this week belongs to God. He closes the doors to attack. He seals off his protection. I've seen powerful agents, far more powerful than me, completely fail to attack people who were gambling on Mondays. Their plan for the week was like it was set in stone, protected, untouchable. Few, no matter what we tried, we couldn't break through that protection. A businessman from Boer had fasted every Monday for 10 years. His blows had assigned me the mission of destroying his company. It was a thriving business that employed dozens of people. His blows wanted to ruin it to demonstrate his power. I tried for 3 months. Every week, I journeyed in my mind to that company. Every week, I planted seeds of bankruptcy, betrayal, and destruction, but nothing worked. The seeds wouldn't take root. It was as if I were planting in concrete. I finally understood why this man fasted on Mondays, and every Monday, he prayed for his company, his employees, and his clients. He declared God's protection. He closed all doors. I had to abandon this mission. His blows were furious, but even he had to admit that some targets were simply beyond his reach. Wednesday is the middle of the week. This is the day of intercession. In spiritual tradition, it is the day when heaven is particularly attentive to prayers. It is the day when the prayers of the saints ascend as if from heaven before the throne of God. When a Christian fasts on Wednesday, these prayers have multiplied power. They ascend directly, without obstruction. They reach heaven with a force we could not block. We were strictly ordered to completely avoid the homes of Christians who fasted on Wednesday. Even approaching them was dangerous. Their spiritual covering was like a force field, and their prayers, those prayers that ascended while they fasted, literally burned us. I remember one night when I made the mistake of approaching a woman who fasted on Wednesday. I didn't know she was fasting. I had come to sow discord in her marriage, but the moment I approached his house in spirit, I felt an intense pain, as if someone were pouring acid on my body. I fled as fast as I could. When I returned to my body, I had marks on my skin, real, physical marks, like burns. They took weeks to heal. That day, I understood that Wednesday was no ordinary day. It was a day when heaven and earth drew closer, a day when prayers had extraordinary power, a day when we were especially vulnerable. But the day we feared most, the one we even whispered about among ourselves, was Friday. Friday is the day of the crucifixion, the day Jesus conquered death on the cross, the day he disarmed the principalities and powers, the day he triumphed over it publicly. When a Christian fasts on Fridays, he shares in this victory. He reminds the spiritual world that the battle has already been won. He declares that the blood of Jesus has accomplished everything. He stands on territory we had already lost. I remember a woman in Bosia, a simple cleaning woman. She was nothing special in the eyes of the world, no particular education, no wealth, no social status. She cleaned the houses of the rich to earn her living, but she had fasted every Friday for 20 years, 20 years without missing a single Friday, no matter what happened, no matter the circumstances. Every Friday, from sunrise to sunset, she fasted and prayed. I received orders to attack her. Her son had begun preaching the gospel in the poorer parts of the city and was converting dozens of people every week. Des personnes qui étaient sous notre influence, des personnes qui nous utilisaient, knew we had to neutralize him, but to reach the sun, we first had to weaken the sea. It's a classic strategy in the world of darkness. You attack the foundations to bring down the building. I tried for 6 months, 6 months of repeated failure. Every Friday, when I approached his house in spirit, it was as if a wall of fire surrounded me. I couldn't even see inside. The light emanating from that simple cleaning woman was blinding, brighter than anything I had ever seen. I tried attacking on the other days of the week, but even then, his protection remained strong, as if the Friday fasts created a blanket that lasted all week, as if each Friday reinforced an invisible shield around him. I finally gave up. I told his blows it was impossible. He simply nodded. He knew that some Christians were beyond our reach, that some fortresses could not be taken. This woman's son continues to preach today. He founded a church, hundreds of people come to hear him every Sunday, and his mother is still there. She still fasts every Friday, she still prays for him, and she remains untouchable. But let me tell you something even more important, something I've discovered over the years. It wasn't just fasting on those days that terrified us. It was the combination of all three. When a Christian fasts regularly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, they create what we called a spiritual fortress, a protection that extends throughout the week, a covering we couldn't penetrate no matter how hard we tried. Monday closed the gates for the week, Wednesday strengthened the protection through intercession, Friday sealed everything with victory. These 3 days formed a triangle of protection that even the most powerful agents couldn't break. I have seen entire families protected because just one person in the house observed this 3-day fast. A grandfather who fasted could protect his children and grandchildren. A mother who prayed could protect all her descendants. I have seen businesses thrive despite all our attacks because the owner fasted for those 3 days. Jealous competitors hired marabouts to destroy his businesses, but nothing worked. The protection was too strong. I have seen churches they became impregnable fortresses because a few intercessors practiced this fast regularly. These churches grew, they multiplied, and we could do nothing to stop them. We could do absolutely nothing. Now, if you have experienced attacks during your sleep, if your prayers seem blocked, if your spiritual life stagnates despite your efforts, if you feel constantly tired for no reason, if inexplicable obstacles arise every time you are on the verge of success, I invite you to participate right now in a powerful action. Write in the comments, "In the name of Jesus, I declare my protection during my fast and I break every assignment against my spiritual life." Don't miss this step. Participating in a public declaration is powerful. When you name the assignment and break it with other believers, you are waging spiritual warfare, and I can tell you from experience that when hundreds of believers participate and together proclaim victory, assignments are broken. I've seen it from the other side. I know what happens in the spiritual world when believers unite to declare. So, participate now. Write, "In the name of Jesus, I declare my protection during my fast and I break every assignment against my spiritual life." That's why I want to talk to you about destroying assignments, the deliverance protocol of 21 days. This is a complete system designed to identify and close every spiritual door in your life. This is 20 days of prayer focused, 20 days of strategic declaration, and 21 days of systematic deliverance from the 7 main attacks that Christians most often fell victim to. When I was in darkness, this protocol was developed by believers who understand spiritual warfare deep within themselves. I followed it myself after my deliverance. It was an integral part of my healing process, teaching me to recognize and close all the doors I had opened personally and for others. The link is in the description. Don't wait until January to begin your transformation. The enemy doesn't wait, why would you? Now let me tell you the rest of my story, because deliverance was just the beginning. What followed showed me